Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'll be showing you how I made this beautiful corset dress using a dartless corset pattern. I'll be taking you on a step-by-step process on how I was able to achieve this dress. This video is going to be in two parts. Okay, so it's going to have a part where I cut and sew the top part, and then the second part will be on how I cut and sew the skirt part and also how I attached it to the top part. Please keep on watching and let's get started. In my previous video I showed us how to draft a cup from scratch. Okay, so I'll be using that cup pattern for this tutorial, so please do well to watch that before you join us on this video, as I'll be linking that in the description. So the first thing I'm going to do is to place my tape on the top of my pattern paper, and then I'm going to mark the chest line. I'm working with the bust point, the under bust, and then the waistline. So if you're making yours as a full blouse, just go ahead to mark your top length. Okay, but for mine I'm just going to be stopping at the waistline. So on the other side, so I'm going to go ahead and mark the chest line. Okay, 7.5 inches, bust point 9.5 inches, under bust 12.5 inches, and then waistline 16 inches. So I'm just going to connect that with my rule. Okay, just connect a straight line with my rule. And then I am going to mark ½ inch inwards from the center front of my pattern paper, okay, on the waistline, on the bust line, and also on the chest line. And then I'm going to connect with a straight line. Next, I'm going to mark the shoulder measurements I am working with divided by 2 on the top of my pattern paper, and then I added extra ½ inch to that for the joining of the shoulder to the sleeve. Okay, and then I went ahead to mark the shoulder measurement on the chest line as well, and then I went ahead to connect with a straight line. And the next thing I'm going to do is to introduce my cup. So I'm going to be placing the cup and making sure that the base of the cup is touching the under bust line. Okay, so take note of that. The base of my cup is touching the under bust line, and then the side of the cup is touching the center front line, okay, on that ½ inch that we had marked. Okay, so just make sure that you place yours the right way, and then I'm just going to be using my pencil to trace out the line of the cup. Okay, so make sure you hold this carefully because this cup is bouncy. It's not really steady. I just had to hold it, and then I marked it, and then I'm going to mark on the side as well. Okay, just mark it like so, and then I'm going to mark the center front of the cup as well. Okay, so I will know where the cup starts from. And then the next thing I'm going to do is to trace out the top part of the cup. And to do this, I discovered that my cup was shaking, so I have to use my tape to hold down the cup so it's going to be stable. Okay, so I just went ahead to hold on the center front side and also on the other side as well. Like I said earlier, there's a tutorial on how I draft the cup from scratch, and I'll be linking that in the description, so you can go watch that before you join us on this video if you haven't. And after holding down the cup with my tape, I'll just go ahead to use my marker to trace the top part of my cup. After tracing, the next thing I'm going to do is to take the waist measurement I'm working with divided by 4, and then I'm going to mark that on the waistline. If you're making yours as a long top, do well to mark your hip measurement divided by 4 on the blouse length. Like I said, mine is going to stop on the waistline, and that is why my measurement stopped on the waistline. I realized that I didn't come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope before creating my armhole curve, but I'll be explaining that in detail in the course of the video. So I went ahead to mark the bust measurement I'm working with divided by 4 on the chest line, and then I created the armhole curve, and then I connected that measurement to the waist line. And then the next thing I did was to mark the neck width I'm working with, and I marked 3 inches, okay, for the neck width, and also 3 inches for the neck depth. And then I connected the neck width to the neck depth with a curve, and then I went ahead to mark 1 inch downwards, okay, from my shoulder to create the shoulder slope, and then I connected that with a slant line into the neckline. And then after that, I went ahead to divide what I have left on my armhole. Okay, so I'm going to be cleaning what I had done initially, and then I'll just go ahead to create my curve. I divided what I have on my armhole by 2, and then I went in by ½ inch and then created my curve. Okay, if you've been following this channel, we've been doing this a lot, so I believe you should understand this step by now. And then after creating the armhole curve for the front, the next thing I'm going to do is to cut out this pattern. So just watch carefully to see the part I'm going to be cutting out. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And next, we are going to be taking out the cup and then cutting it out, okay, separating the yoke from the main piece. So I'm just going to trace that part of my cup. Okay, that's where the cup starts on the center front. I'm going to draw a line on that part to indicate the part, and then I'm going to extend the side line as well, and then I am going to cut out. I don't wanna miss a beat. This is how it looks after cutting out. As you can see, the next thing we are going to be doing now is to cut out the back part. For the back, I ruled out a straight line on my pattern paper to serve as the starting line and also shoulder line, and then I went ahead to mark shoulder measurement divided by 2, and then came down on that point by 1 inch to create shoulder slope, marked neck width of 3 inches the same way we did for the front, slanted the shoulder to the 1 inch line, and then came down by 1 inch for the neckline of the back, and then I'm going to use my curve rule to connect the point. And then after that, I'm going to go ahead and mark the armhole measurement I am working with. I'll mark it on the line, and then I'll go ahead to mark the waist line I am working with, which is 16 inches, the same way I did for the front. And then I am going to be using my rule to connect with a straight line. Next, I will go ahead to mark my chest line. Okay, I'll mark the chest line and then extend the line to the other side using my rule, and then I'll go ahead and confirm my shoulder measurement on the chest line and then mark it down, and then I'll go ahead to connect with a straight line to the top of my shoulder slope. And then the next thing I'm going to do is to mark the bust measurement I am working with divided by 4, and then the waist measurement I'm working with divided by 4 as well on the waistline, and then I'm just going to connect from the waistline to the chest line. And then the next thing I'm going to do is to come down by 9.5 inches. Okay, so that's how deep I want the yoke to be. You can go lower if you want. You can do 10 inches, you can do 11 inches. It depends on how deep you want your back yoke to be. So I marked 9.5 inches, and then I went in by 1.5 inch. Remember that this is not going to have a zipper, it's going to have, I'm going to be adding eyelets to it. So I went ahead to subtract 1.5 inch on the chest line and then 1 inch on the waistline, and then I connected that using my rule. And then I went ahead to curve my armhole, okay, for the back, and then I'll be connecting from the armhole line, okay, that's the chest line, to the part where I marked my neck depth for the back yoke. So I'll just go ahead to connect it with using the curve part of my rule, and then we are going to be coming down on the neck depth of the back. Okay, that is where our button is going to be. We are going to be fixing a loop and a button, and then I'm going to connect with a curve to meet the lower part of the back. So you can decide to curve this anyhow you want. Okay, so I just went ahead to curve that to the lower part of the back, and then I'm going to be cutting this out. after cutting, next thing I'm going to do is to take a 1/2 inch from this yoke part of my pattern, and that's because most times when you sew corset it usually gives at the yoke part. So I'm taking a 1/2 inch and then I slanted that to the armhole line, and I'll also be doing that on the lower part as well. I'll go ahead to subtract 1/2 inch and then connect it back into the armhole line. So that's going to make 1 inch in total. So that means I subtracted 1 inch so that this sits perfectly at the back and we do not experience any gaping. So I'm just going to label this the back part, okay, and then I'm going to be indicating the top part so I don't mix it up when I'm cutting. And then on the lower part of the back, I'll just go ahead to take out 1/2 inch and then slant that into the waistline as well. That is all for the back. The next thing we are going to do is to work on the cups, and then I'm just going to be taking out the tapes that I had used to hold the cups together, and then after that I'll just go ahead to cut open the cup pieces. Remember that this is still a one piece, I've not cut it open, so I just go ahead to cut it into 3 pieces following my line. So just watch carefully to see how I am going to cut this out. Make sure you label your cups so you don't mix it up. For me, I go as far as making notches on my cups so I don't mix it up. So I'll be able to remember which side is the center cup and which side is the side cup. So after cutting the cups, the next thing I'm going to do is to cut on my fabric, and on the fabric I'll be adding 1/2 inch around my cup. So I'm gonna head to cut it. As you can see, I cut for the fabric and also the lining, and I added 1/2 inch round the cups. As you can see, I have 4 pieces of each, and on the lining piece I added a layer of stay, but on the main piece I added 4 layers of stay on the top part of the cup, and on the lower part of the cups for the main piece I added 2 layers. So I'll be explaining why I did that in the course of the video, because I want the top part of the cup to be more firm. Like I said, I'll explain why I did that in the course of the video. So I'll just go ahead to join the side cups and this center cups together, both fabric and lining, and then I'll show you guys how it looks. So I also went ahead to cut the other part of the pattern on the fabric. I went ahead to add 1/2 inch on the cup area of the front on the lower part, and then the back as well, and then I added my sewing allowance on this side. Remember, we did not add sewing allowance while cutting the pattern. So this is how the cup looks after joining the lower part. I'll go ahead now to join the top part of the cup to this lower part, and I am going to be opening it up before joining, because I'll also go ahead to iron this out when I'm done. So after joining, this is how it looks. As you can see, I've gone ahead to join the top part to the lower part, and I repeated the same step for the main piece and also the lining piece. So I'll be using my iron and this tailor's ham to flat open my seams and then iron my cups neatly. And then I'll go ahead to notch this part so it relaxes well. I'll notch on all the pieces, and then I'm going to press open the seams like I said, and then I'm going to come and show you guys how it looks. So this is how it looks after opening the seams. I used stay to hold it down. Okay, so you can decide to skip this, it's not necessary. I just use my stay to hold down the seams that I flat ironed. So after that, I'm going to take my cup. I'll be using a push-up cup for this. So you can go ahead to make your cups using your pattern pieces. Okay, you can decide to do your homemade cups, but for this particular tutorial I decided to use this push-up cup. So I'll be using my hemming gum to attach it. As you can see, I've gone ahead to attach the cups using my hemming gum to the main piece. So you can see why I added 4 layers of stay to the top part of the cup. That's because the already made cup that I bought did not reach the top part of this cup, so I wanted it to be firm on the top part even if this cup doesn't reach that part. So I'll just go ahead to be joining this on the main piece. I already added stay to the main piece of the front as well. I'll go ahead to attach the cup to the main piece and then the cup to the lining as well. As you can see, I just repeated the same process, and this is how it looks. The next thing we are going to do is to cut our yoke for both front and back. And for the back, I want the side of the lace that has this design, that's the edge, to be on the center back of the yoke. So I'm just going to be cutting that out, adding 1/2 inch allowance on the neckline, on the shoulder, and on the lower part. So just watch carefully to see how I'm going to be cutting this. And for this particular lace, I'm using chantilly. This particular chantilly that comes with this fine edge is usually more expensive than the other one we normally use. So I decided to use this because I love the edges and I wanted to add more beauty to the dress. So I'm going to be cutting this out, and then on the side where we're going to be adding our buttons, I went ahead to reduce 1/2 inch on the side, as you can see. And then for the neckline, I still went ahead to reduce it a bit because I felt like the neck was too high. So I decided to go in a bit by about 1/2 inch and then cut out. If you are working with a very small size, you can manage 1 yard of chantilly, but if not, please get 1.5 yards of chantilly. So the next thing we are going to do now is to cut out the front yoke. We are done with the back, and this is how it looks. So we're just going to go ahead and cut out the front yoke. I'll just go ahead to fold my fabric into 2, and then I'm going to be placing this. So for the front as well, we're going to be adding 1/2 inch allowance on the neckline, on the shoulder line, and on the lower part of this pattern. On the armhole line, we don't need to add any allowance because we already added that while cutting the pattern. Like I said before, I added 1/2 inch on my shoulder measurement for the joining of the sleeve to the shoulder of the dress. And then on the side of this front piece, I added 1.5 inch, which is the sewing allowance I used for this project. For the back, I actually forgot to add the 1.5 inch on the yoke, but that's totally fine. I added 1/2 inch on the lower part, and then like I said, I added my 1.5 inch on the side like this, as you can see. So I'm just going to be using my tape to confirm that what I have here is 1.5 inch, and then that is all for the front. I'll be using 2 on the front as a lining, that's on the front yoke as a lining, which we usually call skin net. So it depends on you. You can go ahead to use bias tape to finish the neckline. For me, I decided to use the skin net to finish the neckline of the front. Then for the back, I'll go ahead to use a bias tape to finish the neckline. So I'll just go ahead to join this on the neckline, okay, all the way from the top all the way to the other side of the neckline, and then I'll show you guys how it looks. And then for the back, like I said, I'll be using a bias tape to finish the neckline. So just use a matching color to finish the neckline and then create the loop for our button, because we're going to be adding a button to the back on one side, and then on the other side we are just going to be attaching the loop. Okay, so that loop is what is going to hold the button for the back. So for the loop, I'll just use my bias tape, fold it inwards, and then sew a long piece measuring about 3 inches thereabout, and then I'm going to place it on this side of the back, and then I'm going to sew it down before I finish it up with the bias tape. So this is how it looks after finishing the back with a bias, and also the front with my tool, my skin net. And then I went ahead to join it on the shoulders as well by 1/2 inch. So now I'm going to be placing the front yoke on the main piece like so, and then I'm going to be sewing it all the way, and then I'm going to be placing the lining as well. Okay, so we are going to be sewing it all the way as well, and then sew the sides as well. And then for the back, I'm going to be repeating the same. I'm going to be placing the yoke on the back, place it carefully, and then I'm going to be using the lining piece to also turn it neatly, and then I'm going to come show you guys how it looks. This is how it looks after finishing with the lining. I went ahead to create channels for my boning. I just created 2 channels for my boning. Just look closely to see how I did this. I created channels for my boning for the back, and then I'll be measuring the channel. Okay, just measure the boning channel and then cut a boning that fits into it, and then make sure that the boning is ½ inch shorter than the channel that you created, so that we can be able to join this on the lower part of the dress without any hindrance. So I'm just going to be fixing the boning on all the channels that I created, and then that is all for the top part. I'm going to be showing you how I cut the skirt part of this dress and also the sleeve in the next video that is going to come up after this one. Do well to hit on the subscribe button if you haven't, and please do not forget to turn on the notification bell to get notified each time I post a new video. And please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up if you find it helpful, and if you have questions, please do not forget to drop your questions in the comments. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for stopping by. I love you all. Bye. See you in my next one.